So I think we're very excited about this next session, which is rapid fire updates on golf and health. We've got 5 great speakers that are going to give us a short presentation each on a specific area of expertise. They'll introduce themselves and then share some of their knowledge. So over to John Fry first.
Thank you, Andrew. My name's John Fry. I'm from University Centre Myerscough in the northwest of England. And we've started to develop a research profile along various different aspects of golf research. So what I intend to do today in this rapid fire session is just tell you what we've done and then just give you one key take-home message across 2 or 3 different areas. One of the research projects that we've looked at, the relationship between golf participation, health and well-being for people who've survived a stroke. So the relationship between people's well-being post-stroke. And what we found was that getting involved in a 6-week Get Into Golf program had a positive impact on the lives of people who had suffered a stroke. More so than the traditional clinical methods of rehabilitation that would happen typically in a hospital environment. What was it about golf specifically? You know, we often talk about the fact that golf is in the outdoors, but e-cycles, for example, would also be in the outdoors. We might talk about the social aspects of golf, but a walking group would also promote the social aspects. Well, it was actually the ability to learn a new skill, to execute a new skill, and to get the instant feedback that golf offered that set golf up above many of the other sports that people who had suffered a stroke had played. You know, this was a population of people who were struggling to execute things that they used to do. And that instant feedback of, albeit maybe a 6-foot putt and the ball dropping in the hole, led to a massive spike in the confidence of the people involved. A second research project, we looked at the factors that affect golf participation. And specifically, we wanted to look at the way in which women, girls, and families participate in golf. And what we found was the way in which people consume sport has and is changing. And the reality is, many golf clubs do not offer a product which is tangible to the way in which people consume sport today. Golf did a really good job of getting people to the golf club, but people tended to leave as quick as they arrived. And what we've actually suggested to golf clubs is that there needs to be changes to the way in which golf is offered in order to tap into the wider, more casual golf participation. And what we were saying is it's basic marketing, right? Rather than golf needs to create a product that people want, as opposed to having the product and trying to get people to consume it. There's lots of opportunities for golf to change their product to accommodate with the way that people's lives have also changed. And finally, the final project, I'm going to change the tact a little bit here. So we've conducted research that Andrew mentioned before on the mental health and wellness of elite level sports people. So professional golfers that are playing on, for example, the DP World Tour. And what we found from the research we published in this area is that really we need to conceptualize mental health in sport in the same way as we do physical health in sport, and that it's on a continuum. So at the bottom end of the continuum, people that are moving from a sedentary lifestyle to playing a little bit of sport has a positive impact on the mental health. On the physical health, we know that. But elite level sport can actually be seen as an occupational hazard, where some of the physiological health impacts start to outweigh the positives. And we found that mental health is no different. Going from sedentary to playing a little bit of sport is great for your mental health, but actually, the pressure cooker, the travelling circus that is professional golf is riddled with loneliness, isolation, low decision latitude, and various other impacts. The whole environment is a conduit to have a negative impact upon the professional athletes that exist in that world. So we've been working pretty hard with Andrew and the guys at the DP World Tour to make sure there's a mental health support pathway for players on tour who may be struggling. In times gone by, if a player has an issue with their knee, their wrist, their elbow, their shoulder, whatever, there is a pathway in place. We can go see the physiotherapist, we can get referrals, etc. But traditionally, there has never been anything in place for the athletes. But now there is. There's a 24-hour support line for athletes where they can get access to confidential meetings with a psychologist at any time. There's support systems in place now whereby people who work around the tour are trained to spot the early effects. There's a screening process in place as well. So I'm going to stop there because I've got to keep strict on the 5 minutes, but hopefully that should just give you a little bit of a flavour of the type of research that we do and the implications and some of the findings that we've had. Okay, Andrew? Thank you.
Thanks, John. A world of research in 5 minutes. Amazing. We've got John Greenspan from the US who is going to speak about the International Certificate in Golf Health and Performance.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Greenspan. I'm a member of the European Tour Group's medical and scientific team, and I'm just going to give you a brief little advertisement, if you will, for the International Certificate in Golf Health and Performance. It's been a collaborative effort by a number of organizations and individuals, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some special thanks to all these organizations. Without their support, none of this project would have been possible. The aim of which was essentially to create an educational program and a qualification that would help disseminate information regarding golf medicine, specifically both for elite athletes and for the general population. We wanted to make sure that we also were able to give some insight into the return to play in this, the term that's been thrown around a lot is traveling circus, which is completely apt. The European Tour at the time was one of the first major sports organizations to return after the first wave of the COVID pandemic. So we wanted to be able to demonstrate a lot of the reflections and learnings from that process as well. Additionally, raising awareness on the health benefits of golf and the other public health advantages, a lot of which have already been spoken on today. And finally, just to promote EDGA and disability golf, which, for those of you who haven't seen it in person, it's truly remarkable how impressive some of these athletes are. So we really wanted to raise awareness on that. It originally was based on the online edition of the British Journal of Sports Medicine. There was a page, a special golf edition, which comprised about 20 hours or so of interviews, journal articles, podcasts, opinion pieces, and other forms of content from various experts within the field of golf medicine. And now we have a custom bespoke website that has been created, which looks a little bit like that. And when you go onto the website, golfhealthandperformance.com, you can see each of the different modules broken down. So that's just a screenshot of it. So it's got the different perspectives, elite athletes, health professionals, we've got returning to golf post-COVID, as I said, performance golf, and so on. Those modules are listed up there. So in addition to the ones that I've just said, we've also got disability golf. We've got a good block on medical issues within golf. Some of the topics that have been mentioned, such as mental health, dermatology, a lot of it about the skin screening service that is offered by the DP World Tour, as well as some sections on anti-doping, which is just as important in golf as it is in any other sport. We also use the website to host the lateral flow education and testing modules. When the tour first returned post the first wave of the pandemic, we were asking players or members of the traveling circus to make sure that they were taking lateral flow prior to departure. So by being able to ensure that they were correctly testing, because it sounds self-explanatory, but actually there's quite a bit of variation between the different lateral flow testing. So we were able to make sure there was some continuity there. If you complete the approximate 20 hours of online e-learning, you're faced with a 40-question final exam. It's half of them are multiple choice, half are true or false. It's 80% pass mark, and if you have done the reading appropriately, you are rewarded with one of these beautiful certificates, which I hope would take the point of pride on a CV. I know it has on mine. The link, as I said, is available at golfhealthandperformance.com. The EBJSM is still available online as well if you want to see the content in its original in its original form. But if anyone has any questions, please do email myself or talk with Dr. Murray. It is free of charge for everyone who's attending the conference here and online at home as well. So, I'd really like to take this opportunity to encourage as many of you as possible. We've had a very good uptake so far, but can only be better, and we want to disseminate the information and make the program as wide-reaching as possible. So, good luck, everyone, and many thanks.
Thanks, John, and to Will Winterby for leading that. Great to hear that. I think that, again, if there have been multiple completions on 6 different continents, so there's some great stuff that everyone in this room, I'm sure, has contributed to that, but thanks to our partners at BJSM and on the impact factor, again, being the #1 global journal in the sport and exercise medicine field. Very excited about the next talk, because we've talked about public health, we've talked about illness and injury surveillance, but we're also now looking at implementation and what can actually make a difference. So Saskia will come and speak to us about warm-up and injury prevention.
Yes, well, great. Yeah, you're seeing my crutches. Having a little hip injury and had surgery a couple of weeks ago, so that's the reason of that. Well, I'm a physical therapist working in private practice, and also a PhD student on golf injury prevention and the implementation of that. So that's where I'm going to talk about. So it's a little bit of a joke standing here with some crutches talking about prevention, but yeah, it is. Well, what we are doing is we are performing a randomized controlled trial at the moment about the effectiveness of golf-related injury prevention program. We call it the GRIP program. And we are comparing that with a usual warm-up in golfers. And as we all know, we do have injury prevention programs, and they have proven to be effective in different sports to reduce injuries. For example, volleyball, baseball, handball. But there are no injury prevention programs yet in golf, as mentioned earlier. So what we did, we developed one. And I will just tell you some short part of the development process, because it was a big process. We used, therefore, the knowledge transfer scheme. That's a specific tool to integrate existing research into a practical tool within 5 steps. And what we did is within 5 steps, we had 3 expert meetings with a multidisciplinary group. We did also 2 pilot studies. And at the final end, we had our intervention. But that's just a short summarization of it. Well, what are we doing at the moment? We are just having a 5-month follow-up. Well, inclusion criteria for a study were a handicap below 36. Golfers needed to be 45 years and older, playing once a week 9 holes. Of course, we needed some informed consent of those golfers, and after that, they were randomized with their club into the control group, and we have at the moment 155 golfers in that group, and they are doing the warm-up as usual. And we also have the intervention group, and we have 162 golfers in that group, and they are performing our program. Well, our program we developed, it's an unsupervised program. So that's important to note. So what we did before we started with the RCT, we tested our program, what was the best way to give instructions to our golfers. And we gave the golfers an instruction card, we gave them a video, and we gave them both options, an instruction card and a video. And what we found was when the golfers had video, or they had both options, the instruction card and the video, they were performing the exercises more often correctly. So what we did is we gave the golfers in our study, we sent them the instruction card with the post and a digital link to our instruction video. Well, and then some results, but I have to mention those are preliminary because we are still collecting some data. On injury incidents, we found in the control group for now 5.3 injuries per 1,000 hours of golf, and in the intervention group 5.1 injuries per 1,000 hours of golf. But we've been asking in our questionnaire about the hours of golf and also about the holes they've been playing. So we have different numbers for playing holes. We found in the control group 1.2 injuries per 1,000 holes, and in the intervention group 1.1 injuries per 1,000 holes. And at this moment we found not a significant difference at the moment between the groups. Well, then we have our intervention group, and they have some compliance. So we ask every week on the golfers, like, well, have you been playing golf? And yes, if they have. We asked, they had a full compliance if they performed the program always when they were playing, a moderate compliance when they did it sometimes, and no compliance when they were never performing it during that week. And what we found was a compliance of 70% with our program, moderate compliance of 20% weekly, and 10% had no compliance with the program. And we also asked at our final questionnaire some additional questions about the experiences of the golfers with our intervention. And we asked them, did you enjoy performing the exercises from a scale from 0, no fun, to 10, very funny to do? And they scored a mean of 7.2. We also asked them about how likely is it to continue these exercises in the future. And again, on a scale from 0, unlikely, to 10, most likely they scored a mean of 7.7. And our final question was, and keep in mind it was an unsupervised program, and we asked them about how understandable were the exercise instructions, with a 0 not understandable and a 10 very easy to understand, and they scored a mean of 8.7. I didn't think I told that. The program consists of 6 exercises. The golfers are able to do it in around 10 minutes, so when they go to the tee box, they are able to do it while waiting before playing. So, yeah. Well, in summarization, we found no significant differences between the group at this moment. In the control group, we had 5.3 injuries per 1,000 hours of golf. In the intervention group, 5.1 injuries per 1,000 hours of golf. We found a full compliance of 70% weekly. The program was accessible and fun for the golfer, and it's likely golfers are continuing the exercises in the future. Well, that was my talk. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Saskia. Fantastic to see their work in this space and its potential in the future as well. The next speaker is Patrick Robinson, who's going to speak to us about the wrist and golf and some specific findings related to the ECU tendon.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Robinson. I'm an orthopaedic surgery registrar here in Edinburgh, and for the last 2 years I've been the European Tour Research Fellow. This is a study conducted at the University of Edinburgh looking at muscle contractility of the extensor carpi ulnaris muscle in the forearm leading down to the wrist in sub-elite golfers during the golf swing. So we've heard from Adri already today about the back being clearly the most prevalent source of injury in elite golfers, but the hand and wrist is the next second most prevalent injury in these high-level athletes, and it's the lead wrist, so the left wrist in a right-handed golfer, so the one that's closest to the target, which gets injured about 2/3 of the time compared to the trail wrist 1/3. And when you look at the lead wrist injuries, it's extensor carpi ulnaris, which runs down the ulnar border of the forearm and into the wrist, which contributes to about half of all lead wrist injuries. And it tends to be tendinopathy, tenosynovitis, and occasionally subsheath tears for traumatic injuries. This is the muscle running from the elbow down to the base of the fifth metacarpal, and it's primarily involved in extension and ulnar deviation of the wrist. So our study was to look at the timing and magnitude of this muscle in the forearm in sub-elite golfers and compare left versus right or lead versus trail. And we thought because of the asymmetry in the reported injury that the lead wrist would be working harder in the golf swing and being recruited more. So we took 15 sub-elite golfers and we used the IOC consensus statement, which a number of people are here who co-authored this paper. So we took handicap golfers less than 5 or PGA teaching professionals, so they had typically good biomechanics in their swing, which are reproducible, and we used these EMG sensors and placed them on the forearms of the lead and the trail arm over the midpoint of the ECU muscle belly, and then we used IMU sensors on the dorsum of the hand and the distal radius to be able to correlate at what time in the swing the EMG sensors were reporting peaks. And the players had 15 shots, 5 pitching wedges, 5 7-irons, and 5 drivers. So from short to long clubs and low velocity to high velocity. We looked at some other variables as well, which are sort of golf-related performance variables. So angle of attack, how steep you hit into the ball, club path, so whether you hit it to the left or to the right, and then club head speed. And this is where this is our lab. This is our area of study at a local golf club in this performance studio inside, which was great because we did much of this during a cold period in Edinburgh. And this is a professional golfer who we sort of did things back to front. This is the Scottish Open last year or the year before, where we trialed this methodology for the first time with a guy who swings the club 120 miles an hour, and so there was a real possibility that the leads would fly off down the driving range during COVID, which is not ideal, but they managed to stick on, and that's what it looked like. There was an additional IMU sensor on the distal radius, so the distal aspect of the forearm as well. These were our results. There's a lot of data there, but essentially that's comparing left versus right and different phases of the swing. On the left side, those are average numbers, and on the right side, those are peak numbers. But the real guts of it is this graph. So the blue is the lead wrist, and the red is the trail wrist. So you can see Rory McIlroy, commiserations for Sunday, at the bottom of the x-axis there in the backswing. So the lead wrist was actually recruiting more during the backswing. But as we came down into the downswing, there's a big peak from the right side, which then quite quickly tails off. And the second dotted line, vertically there, is impact. And so when we went into follow through, then the lead wrist took over again. And then we ran statistical parametric analysis on this and showed that there were statistical differences between left and right, or lead and trail, at every point in the phases that we divided the golf swing up into. We also looked at the TrackMan data and found no correlation between any of the variables that I mentioned earlier. And so, in summary, the lead and the trail ECU are doing different things at different phases of the swing. And to our surprise, when the club was at its highest velocity in the downswing, it was actually the right side that was being recruited more. And we hypothesized for future studies this is probably due to the different types of biomechanics that go on in the lead and the trail wrist, and also the nature at which the nature of the contraction of the tendon in both sides, be it concentric, isometric, or eccentric. And just like to acknowledge the governing bodies and the DP World Tour who helped with this study. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Paddy. So we go to Finland on our journey around the world next. We've got Timo Vähälä speaking about the social impact of golf in Finland, looking at some of the social and the economic factors there.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to present our project. So I'm Timo Ala-Vähälä. I'm working in the Association of Sports Sciences in Finland, and this project we are doing in cooperation with the Finnish Golf Association. And now I'm going to discuss very shortly about how does golf contribute to the physical activity in a country like Finland, where the golf season is quite short. And so I have three topics about the intensivity of sport, intensivity of golf, the length of the golf season, and the role of golf in different stages of person's life, so the length of the golf career. In addition to this, we are going to analyze the economy of golf in Finland, the direct economic activities, and the indirect economic impacts. But now I'm focusing on the basic facts that we have collected so far. Our data and methods, it consists of web survey. We sent an invitation to 10,000 members of our golf association and got 1,052 responses. And then we have the company Polar, who is doing cooperation with us. We have the data of physical activity of golf players, and so we can compare these two kinds of data together. In addition, in the field of economic, we have economic data of golf clubs, and also previous research. So I'm collecting data about the physical activity, and based on that we are trying to extrapolate what are the health benefits and what are the economic benefits of golf in Finland. Some basic data. About 70% of golf players in Finland are 50 years old or older. And the most active groups is the people between 50 years and 60 years. More than 50% have a higher education and occupation, the status of occupation. Big groups are retired, 28%. Then the biggest group are people in executive positions or senior level white-collar workers. And this is the most common group in age group 30 years, 40 years, and also in 40 years, for people in 40s and 50s. But when we are going to younger groups, which are not so common, big group among golf players, the biggest group are blue-collar workers, because they are about 1/3 of the people who are playing golf in that group belongs to people who do not have higher education. The second group is students who probably will have higher education in the later phase of their life. Physical activity of golf players. When we are speaking about all physical activity, golf included, I suppose the Finnish golf players, they are quite active. More than half are practicing some kind of physical activity, at least 8 hours per week. And golf, the weekly activity during the season is about at least one time, over about 60%, almost 70% play golf at least one time per week, and almost 30%, 3 to 4 times per week. So I suppose, even though the season is quite short, the people are playing quite actively when they are playing. So the length of the golf season is typically from 5 months to 7 months. And the players that have play longer season, they are usually also active. Their weekly level of activity is also higher. And when we are speaking about the role of golf during the lifespan, the people in the age group of 50, 59 years, they all usually had played over 10 years, and it was very common that they had been playing over 20 years of their life golf. And almost the great majority of the respondents consider that they are going to keep the level of the activity at the same level or even increase it. When we are going to the eldest age group, people are expecting the deterioration of their health, and so they were not so optimistic. But I suppose in general, people had feeling that they are going to also. They had a long tradition of playing golf, and they had the optimistic feeling, that they try to continue their hobby as long as possible. And because in Finland, the golf cannot be the only way of physical activity, because there are at least 5 months per year when it's practically impossible or very difficult. So they do have to have other physical activities. Among young players, the most common ways of sports were gym, ball games, and running. And among old players, it was walking or practical activities in home or garden. And the experienced benefits of golf, it was asked. So according to the survey, all golf people felt that golf helps to relax, and it gives joy and creates meaningfulness to life. And it also helps, that was the experience, it helps to maintain health and fitness, and it gives an opportunity to spend time with friends and family members. This has been discussed all here, even before. But surprising was that the instrumental values were less important, so people were a bit skeptical about the uses of creating networks, or to have uses to use golf as an help in professional career or something like that. So I suppose it was more personal experiences, personal feeling of sorry, now I'm mixing words. I mean, it was about the personal well-being more and less about the career or that kind of stuff. And discussion so late. In Finnish context, I could say that the golf cannot be the only form of physical activity, but it can be an essential part of an active lifestyle. and especially this is especially among middle-aged and older people. Golf players do have other physical activities, so playing golf doesn't mean that the players are passive during the winter time. And golf players over 30 years, they are mainly well-educated people, but among younger players, there is also a great share of blue-collar workers, which may indicate change in the golf culture, but I suppose this needs more further research. Okay, thanks.
So many thanks to Timo, to John, to Paddy, to John, and to Saskia. Rapid fire session. Are there a couple of rapid fire questions as well?
Health that you offer to the men's tour, do you do that for the ladies tour? And what do you think the women's tour would need more help than the men, vice versa?
I should perhaps introduce Catherine as a LPGA winner and a vice captain for Solheim Cup, and also someone that really cares about developing the next generation of both female and male players as well. So great question.
Yeah, fantastic question. As far as I'm aware, the same services are not offered to the women's tours, and arguably, well, they certainly should be, perhaps even more so, because some of the stresses that we're talking about in the papers on the men's tour, for example, the difference between players that are in lots of money and the difference between players who are just scraping by, is much more exaggerated on the women's golf tours. So they are more exposed to the issues, but as far as I'm aware, I know Andrew started to work with the ladies' tours as well, they're not supported in as great depth.
I think it's definitely a concrete area that we should do more on and look at that together as well. So. I've got 4 hands. First.
Thanks very much for that really biomechanical study. I wonder, you obviously control for variability in players that are really good and also the surface. Would you expect to find differences? Because it's quite a surprising result if you varied the context of the shot, so if it's on a fairway versus in the rough, where you might have to resist double deviation, or if you've got mere mortals like us who are knocking around and having a different biomechanical swing, obviously that's a huge proportion of the expected differences.
Yeah, thank you. The study was done with the control of the same mat in the swing studio that you saw during the presentation. There is probably an anecdotal feeling that links golf is potentially more prone to wrist injuries with kind of harder turf, or if you're hitting off hard mats. And I think from Andrew's experience, you would see that typically in the history of people who are presenting with wrist problems is that they've spent time on either a lot of mats in cold countries where they can't play, particularly when they're practicing indoors, or if they're during the kind of the summer British and Irish links season. So I think that definitely plays a role, but nobody has actually shown that in data before. But it would be definitely something that would be very interesting to do. We did think about doing the study outside on turf, but then it just brought another variable of weather and also then to control for what turf you're hitting off.
Hopefully of interest to your footballers as well. You go next, Annette.
I couldn't tell where you're a question for John. I'm Andrew Cullen, PGA coach. I'm always at the front line. I deal with a lot of beginners, converting people who may have an interest also through this brilliant information we're creating here and actually converting them into golfers. I was interested that you said you did a study on accessibility and what the sort of more modern approach is. What do we need to be doing as coaches to turn that accessibility, what the key accessibility things that we can use to get the interest and then convert?
Okay, so the obvious ones are people are looking for quicker, more easy access sports, which are cheaper. So that would be an offering, but I think that the bigger picture is what creates repeat consumers. So what gets people coming back regularly is the social aspects of sport, and professional golfers tend to get bogged down a little bit with the technical aspects and a handicap and improving and lots of rules, which for the core fans might be ideal for the core players. But if you're looking for casual crossover appeal, what, in impacts upon whether people come back or not is a sense of belonging to a group. And a fantastic quote that I heard last week at a conference I was at was, people will leave a good golf course, but they won't leave a good golf club. So the focus of attention, in my opinion, is on the golf club and a sense of belonging and the social aspects of sport if you're going to create longevity in the sport.
Nanette.
Thank you. One rapid-fire comment. I think Saskia's research calls out for the RNA to sponsor every first tee box with the 6 exercises for warming up while you're waiting. And that would be great implementation. And one genuine question for Timo. Surprised not to see any gender analysis. Were they all men, or what's the percentage of men and women in your data?
1/3 was women and 2/3 was men, and I'm going to do that analysis too.
Okay, thank you. Rapid fire answer.
Perfect. Great. Well, what a great session. The next sessions are parallel sessions, so they split into 2. So there'll be a focus on musculoskeletal issues here with Professor Roald Barr, and with Phil O'Connor looking at musculoskeletal imaging. And the second parallel theme is looking at the health benefits of golf and looking at inclusivity and primary care aspects to that as well, with Dr. Roger Hawkes, Lindsay and Frank Sullivan from the University of St Andrews, and keeping golf as well, looking at skin screening and heart health MOTs with Richard Acton and Patrick Robinson. The musculoskeletal theme is here, so people are welcome to take a comfort break and come back in a minute or 2, whilst the health benefits and health theme is in the Deacon Suite, which our staff downstairs will tell you where to go. If you follow me, you'll end up trapped in a closet. But if we could just offer a round of applause to our speakers again.